As Your Heart Betrays You, Part 28. A Miraculous Ladybug Fanfiction written and narrated by Mira Rose. Artwork by EvenArt Adam on Instagram and Tumblr. You can find them linked in the description box, as well as the prior 27 parts if you need to catch up. If you haven't already, as usual, please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment to help the YouTube algorithm. If you don't know what to comment, put Adrian aggressed. Please enjoy As Your Heart Betrays You, Part 28. Adrian aggressed, getting ready to leave Paris. Adrian hadn't gone to see Marinette as Cat Noir yet. He was right. Paris was toxic for him, polluting his mind like the air he breathed. He needed to clear his head. He needed to clear his lungs. He needed his avocado trees. And, although he knew it wasn't good for him, Adrian knew Cat Noir needed to see Marinette. She hadn't done anything wrong, really, besides rejecting his advances. The problem was, no matter how many times he'd made up his mind over the years, as soon as he saw her, all of his resolutions went out the window, and he was ready to do anything for her. Anything. Including continuing to ruin himself. He'd have to leave as soon as he could. He had a shift at the nursery the day after tomorrow, and that should be enough. That would tear him back into his senses once he returned. Then again, if he went to see Ladybug, he'd spend the next 6 months dissecting whatever happened, and that certainly isn't the way to grow. He didn't want to give up his Kwamis either. One was almost a birthright at this point, and the other was his best friend who had been there for just about everything. But as he left, his bedroom door clicking behind him, Adrian felt a wave of loneliness only time or an old friend could wash away. He knew better. He knew better, and it's always "and" that strips a person, isn't it? And he knew it wasn't right to not check in with her. Even setting aside her being the guardian, they were partners. They'd always been, despite the imbalances between them. He should honor that, even if she didn't treat him with respect. As Cat got closer, rooftop by rooftop, to Marinette's apartment, his stomach churned, a cloud spreading over his abs and mind. He knew better than to walk in through the front door for media's sake, but this nausea made traveling dangerous. So instead of gallivanting in, unsure if he'd be able to crack a smile, Cat sat on a random rooftop in Paris, staring out at the city that taught him kindness and cruelty. A familiar tack-tack of feet landing behind him made his muscles tighten. Right. Of course he'd been spotted by now. Cat. She took a seat beside him, thighs just about touching, and he wanted to pull away. He also wanted to put his head on her shoulder. Ladybug, he said, clearing his throat without looking at her. You're back. He shifted to make room between them. I left. I know. What happened? The softness in her voice was a double-edged sword, both sides of the wound making him want to cry. It was a juxtaposition to how her words shot to kill in his office. I needed to get away. And you're back now? I'm here for now. What happened between you and Adrian? He swallowed. What do you mean? I don't think it's a coincidence that you both disappeared overnight, then reappeared the same week. He shouldn't be reckless, but the fatigue he'd suffered under for years bubbled up. You're right, it's not. What's going on with the two of you? She reached to touch his hand, and he pulled away. He couldn't be more rigid if he tried. Why did you yell at him? Who? Adrian? She practically scoffed at the question. Why did you yell at him earlier? Kat turned to her, seeing her for the first time in months while wearing the expression of someone who cared about him. She blinked, unguarded for this question. That's... You were beyond rude, Ladybug. Why would you do that to him? She fumbled over her word choices, then sighed. He took you away from me, Kat. Of course I'd be upset. What do you mean, took me away? I left. Because of him? She gestured, palm up toward the city where her big, bad Adrian Agrest was sure to lurk. Because of... Kat swallowed, taking a moment to compose himself. She wasn't the enemy. Her assumptions were. I'm not a child, LB. I can make my own decisions. But I left first. What? She grimaced at the question, shaking her head with an open mouth. No, you didn't. This was absurd. Why did you think it couldn't have been my idea? Because you would never leave me like that. It was another explosion, her expression fierce and passionate until she noticed him returning her gaze with a tired look. Her features softened as her face fell, realizing what she'd said. I'm not a child, LB, Kat repeated, standing. I can make my own decisions. That's not what I meant. My identity is more than just you, Ladybug. Her breath caught. That's not what I... Kat, why are you acting like this? We're partners. Why did you yell at Adrian Agrest? He controlled his tone this time, making sure it didn't come off as a threat. She clutched her elbow and studied the shingles, clearly taken aback by the confrontation. Surely this wasn't how she imagined their reunion to be. Would you treat a retail employee like that? Of course not. You barged into his office and yelled at him without waiting for answers. Answers to questions that were entirely inappropriate because of the way you phrased them, no less. Kat, Ladybug looked up at him, eyebrows knit. What is this? You don't talk back to me like this. There it was. I hate to admit it, Kat sighed, stepping back and readying himself for a jump. But you remind me more of my father than myself. What's that supposed to mean? Irony. Don't be cryptic. Get back here. He touched down in the alley instead, walking as if he had a purpose despite not knowing where he'd go. Kat! Ladybug landed behind him. Kat, wait up! Don't wanna. You're being ridiculous! He spun on his heels, ready to lash her with words the same way she did when he didn't wear a mask. No, that's not what he wanted. Up until this point, he wasn't the villain. He was a guy standing up for himself for once in his life. If he said what he was about to, it'd come from a place of hurt and selfishness. Instead, Kat sighed, backing up into the brick behind him as his partner caught up. We're fighting, Ladybug stated.
It looks that way.
Why are we fighting?
I think, well, because I broke your heart 4 years ago.
What?
Sorry.
He drew a breath.
Can we start this again?
Ladybug stared at him, hand on her hip, then sighed, tightening her face into a smile. Hey, Cat, it's been a bit. She waved her free hand at him. How have you been?
Oh, hello, Ladybug,
Cat replied, throat closing. Get through it. He had to get through it.
Well, I can tell you all about it if you want to catch up over a cup of something, if you'd like.
She started nodding, and he was fairly certain he could see tears stinging her eyes the same way they stung his. Yeah, I'd like that. My place?
Sure, yeah.
Cat nodded. Okay, cool. She brushed her fingers across her cheek, and his heart squeezed. Can we hold hands? Nothing could have prepared him for that question.
Excuse me?
You're excused. Her eyes shone, and he couldn't tell if the twinkle was mischievous or not. It's that or kiss and make up. Cat bit back a smile. No, he wanted to be angry with her right now. He wanted to not get caught up in her storms, cowering whenever a crack of lightning came and brushing it off as the price to pay to exist in such a force of nature. He wanted to make sure his heart listened to his mind, but trading a smile with her like this over a joke like that made him willing to stand in the center of her clouds. Did you not go to kindergarten? You know, where you have to hold hands or hug when you apologize?
Oh.
Cat laughed, shaking his head, but taking her outstretched hand.
Is that what this is?
An apology? Only if you'll return it. Squeezing her hand 3 times, Cat looked down at her.
Whenever I'm near you, I'm afraid it's impossible to stay mad.
That was more than half the problem, and why he needed to leave in the first place. Are we good? She asked, the traces of jokes and banter leaving her face. She squeezed his hand in return when he didn't answer, as if prompting him to say something sweet.
Let's just get some food in us first, okay? And someone told me once that if you feel like you hate the world, you should probably eat.
Am I the world? She teased. At one point, she was.
Let's just get something in us before continuing to talk.
My place or your shoebox apartment? Truth be told, he'd forgotten about that place. Oops.
Your place sounds great. I'll be.
Great. She beamed up at him, and it was like nothing had ever challenged their relationship. It wasn't a good thing. He still needed to have a heart-to-heart with her, one that would change the way she smiled at him forever. But here he was, in the middle of Paris, hand in hand with the girl he loved, despite doing everything he could to not be in love with her. This would end badly. He never should have left his avocado trees. Thank you so much for listening. Part 29 is on the way. Man, we are 63,000 words into this story. That's interesting. Anyway, if you're still listening, comment 63K, and I will catch you in the next one. Don't forget to hit the bell for whatchamacallit. My blood sugar's low. Notifications. Hit the bell for notifications and subscribe if you haven't. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!